Good morning. I am Councillor Gord Perks. I'm the chair of the Planning and Housing Committee. We have quorum. I am now calling meeting 30 to order. Welcome, everyone. Today's meeting is being held by video conference and in person at City Hall in Committee Room 1. This meeting is also being live streamed at youtube.com Toronto City Council Live. Although we may be meeting in different locations today, the Planning and Housing Committee would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. If you are registered to speak at today's meeting, please listen for me to call your name. I will call speakers in the order they appear on the list. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Planning and Housing Committee page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. If you are present in the room and wish to register on an item, please come up to the glass partition located on my right-hand side, and a member of the clerk's staff will come to you. Members, the City Clerk has provided all agenda materials on toronto.ca/council and on CMP, the Clerk's meeting portal. Clerk's IT staff are available to members if you need help with your devices. I want to remind you to please submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at phc@toronto.ca to help with motions. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes from our meeting of April 14th? Councillor Nunziata. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, now I need my other piece of paper. Let's do the agenda rundown. PH 30.1. There's a speaker on that item, so I'll hold it. PH 30.2, Toronto Builds, 970 Kipling Avenue Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application, Decision Report for Approval. I'll just move that. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. PH 30.3, we have speakers. PH 30.4, 65 through 87 Heward Avenue, Official Plan Amendment Application Appeal Report. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this? Seeing none, I'll move it. All those in favor, opposed, carried. PH 30.5, 65 Heward, Notice of Intention to Designate a Property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. See no speakers, so I will move that one as well. All those in favor, opposed, carried. PH 30.6 has deputants. PH 30.7 has a deputant. PH 30.8 has a deputant. PH 30.9, the 2026 Toronto Heritage Grant Awards, second round. We have no deputants on that, so I'll just move it. All those in favor, opposed, carried. PH 30.10, 3032 and 38 to 40 Huntley Street and 122 to 124 Isabella Street. Notice of intention to designate a property under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Does anyone want to hold that? No? But Councillor Myers is eager to move it. So all those in favor, opposed, carried. Item PH 30.11, property included on the city's heritage register. Consideration of objection for 1767 Bayview Avenue, 1773 Bayview Avenue, and 73 Niagara Street. Does anyone wish to hold that? Seeing none, I'll move it. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We also have a request to add a new business item, which we will number PH 30.12, making it easier to build multiplexes. It's a letter from Mayor Chow. Can I have a motion to introduce? Councillor Crisanti is eager to do that. So Councillor Crisanti is moving introduction. All those in favor of introducing it? That carries. We'll leave that on the agenda for a little while so members have a chance to read it. So that completes the rundown. That takes us to the top of the agenda, PH 30.1, Ookwemin Minising, City Initiated Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment and Precinct Plan Update, Decision Report for Approval. We have a registered deputant on the item, Mark Richardson. Online. I understand, Mark, you're online. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can, Mark. Welcome. You've done this before, so you've got 5 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
I will take less than 2 because I'm speaking on other items later today, and I will be there in person later. On behalf of the volunteers at Housing Now TO, we just wanted to thank Create TO and Waterfront Toronto on the excellent work on this new plan for Ookwemin, formerly known as Villiers Island. As some of you who have been around a while will recall, originally, the planning for this site back in 2017 was only 4,800 units of housing. It came back with an additional housing and a higher affordable housing target in 2023, early 2023. At that time, we recommended to get to 30% affordable housing, you would need approximately 12,000 units of total housing on Ookwemin, Villiers, in order to deliver the affordable housing requirement that you need. And as you will see from the staff report before you today, you have just over 12,000 units of total housing. So it's taken us 9 years from that 2017 report, but we now have $3 billion for a new transit line in that area as well. We want to move as fast as we can on these projects while we have some stability in the federal government and their current desires to use Build Canada homes to support new developments near transit. So just a thank you for listening to our advice, and you'll be hearing similar advice to go bigger, move faster on other items later this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant? Okay, I'm just going to mark my calendar. Today is the day Mark Richardson thanked the Toronto Public Service. Are there any questions or speakers on the item? No? Okay, then I'll move it, and you have my thanks as well. Oh. Sorry, I do have a question for staff. Sure, go ahead.
I know that staff is following up on the motion that I moved to better understand the impact on the proposed housing in the new neighborhood as a result of the prospect of jets being introduced to Billy Bishop Airport. But I was just wondering if staff, even at this stage, can provide us just some feedback on, what is being proposed. Is there a general understanding that if the flight path needs to be changed to accommodate jets at Billy Bishop, is there a reasonable suggestion that the housing targets could be affected along with schemes to achieve more affordable housing units as well?
So through the chair, I wouldn't be able to confirm that at this point. That's the direction that we were given, and we were working on a report back in June as to whether or not any changes at the airport would affect the flight paths, and which would then have a carry-on effect in terms of building envelopes that would be permitted. What we've got in front of you today is in keeping with the current flight path requirements, but I wouldn't be able to comment yet. That will come forward in June as to whether or not there's any implications as a result of changes.
Just to be clear, like that's the current flight path requirements, but if the flight path requirements change to accommodate jets flying out of the island, there is a possibility that this plan in front of us could change as well.
So through the chair, that's what we're looking at in the June report back, both in terms of if there's any implications of the flight paths change in terms of length, direction, orientation, any of those sorts of things. So yes, that's work that we'll be bringing back in June based on what we have. We still don't have any specific plans, so we will do the best to kind of identify whether there's any impacts based on the information we have on hand today.
And lastly, on that path of questions. Has there, to your knowledge, has there been an actual, aside from the Premier's announcement that he wants to expropriate city lands and remove it from the tripartite agreement, has there been an actual plan that anyone has actually read to be able to review what the impact might be of the announcement?
So we have not seen any specific plans to this date.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak to the item? Councillor Matlow?
This is a very exciting plan.
Could you do me a favor and move it?
Oh, sure. I'll move it. Thank you. Very happy to move it. And this has been decades in the making, decades and decades in the making, with a new park, a new neighborhood, pedestrianized street, more housing options for more people, along with affordable housing for those who need it. This is turning what was an industrial area and then a really vapid vacant space into a new vibrant neighborhood for people. And I want to acknowledge all the work from city staff, along with all of their other partners, to achieve this dream. And it hasn't been fully achieved yet, but it's one heck of a long way from where it began. And so I just want to really acknowledge the creativity, the thoughtfulness, and the very hard work that so many people have put into this. The reason I ask those questions, though, that I am very concerned about how decades of work, thoughtful, evidence-based work, with so many partners, that has finally arrived at this point where we're ready to launch a new neighborhood, that all these plans could be shattered and have to be rethunk, and many drawing boards will have to be revisited, including ways to provide more affordable housing units within the new housing supply. If all of a sudden a unilateral edict from above at Queen's Park just dismantles all these years of good planning. The fact that nobody here, including the chief planner, has been provided a proposal, a plan to actually understand what the impacts might be is really concerning to me. Because we've already heard that there's a plan to introduce jets to Billy Bishop. It's already been announced as a fact by the Premier. And he's already announced legislation moving forward to expropriate lands on the Toronto Islands and in Bathurst Quay in the waterfront neighborhoods. But there's been, and we do know, we don't need to theorize, we know the NAVCAN will say that the flight path will have to change if jets are introduced. And we know that it will have an impact on the height of these buildings and the number of units that can be provided to this new neighborhood, which we already know will impact the plan that we are discussing today. Now, how much it'll impact and exactly how many units will be removed and how many affordable units will be lost and the impact to the entire plan, we don't know yet. And Mr. Thorne was correct. Like we need a plan to actually read so that we can understand what the reality will be. But I'll just say that I hope that if the province is true to its word that it wants to meet its housing targets, it will work with us rather than at us on the future of this vibrant new neighborhood. And I also believe that Prime Minister Carney also wants to achieve the federal government's housing targets and will do everything they can to ensure that whatever plan moves forward will support this vision for Ookwemin Minising, along with the vision for the rest of the waterfront, working with Waterfront TO to introduce new parks, recreational opportunities, the new exciting vision for Exhibition Place, and the entire waterfront together, including Humber Bay to the Scarborough Bluffs. So I move this because I'm excited about this vision. This is aspirational vision that has so much substance and work been put into it. But I really hope that it's not derailed by some unilateral announcement that has not been thought through. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a couple of remarks to that. So to waterfront staff and planning staff, you just want to echo that thanks. This is a really remarkable piece of city building, and I just wanted to include Councillor Fletcher in the praise. Those of you who have worked with Councillor Fletcher will know that she is uniquely determined in this city building enterprise and has really done a lot to improve inch by inch, mile by mile this work. And it's a real achievement for all of us on council. It's rare that an urban municipality like ours gets a whole new neighborhood, and the amount of care, thoughtfulness, and determination that have gone into getting us to this point has really been something to see. So thanks to all who've been involved. And with that, anyone else to speak? No, we'll just vote. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. That takes us now to PH 30.3, which is 3838 Bloor Street West, Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Decision Report. We have a number of deputants. Before we begin the item, I'd like to make a few comments as chair. The Planning and Housing Committee welcomes comments from members of the public in writing and as presenters at our meetings. We understand individuals are passionate and committed to their views on a given subject. Hearing from the public is a very important part of how local democracy works. As chair of the committee, I am required to enforce some rules for public presentations in accordance with council's procedures. I want to remind everyone today of those rules. Public presenters to committee must not speak disrespectfully about anyone, must not use offensive language, and speak only about the subject on which the committee is invited them to make a public presentation. On this last point, I just want to be clear. What we have in front of us is a zoning proposal. And so this is about the size and shape of the building, how it fits into the physical context of the neighborhood, those kinds of land use planning questions. And we're really eager to hear any thoughts you have on those questions. We're not discussing any other item at this moment. Okay, so we'll dive in. The first deputant we have is Andrea Pashti. Did I get that even close? Pashti? Welcome. Make yourself comfortable. Make sure that you tap the button in front of you till it turns green. Yeah, and you've got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, welcome everybody, and thank you for inviting me to the Planning and Housing Committee, and welcome City Council members and members of the community and giving us this time. I'm here with Grace Kolawali. She will not be speaking, but represents Street Haven as well. So my name is Andrea Pashti, and I am the Executive Director at Street Haven, and we are a GTA-based women-centered organization that provides emergency shelter, supportive housing, mental health supports, training, employment services, and other services to women experiencing homelessness, trauma, addictions, and poverty. As the shelter operator, I'm here to support this proposal and the zoning changes that have been brought forward. The city's own streets needs assessment confirms what we see every single day on the ground. There's a significant shortage of women-specific shelter spaces in the GTA. More women are living unsheltered or cycling between unsafe situations that we have spaces available for. At our current sites, we see this every day. We serve more women on the streets seeking shelter than women already housed with us, and our beds are at capacity every single night. That reality means women are routinely turned away at the door, not because the need isn't urgent, but because the space simply does not exist.
Andrea,
yes.
Do you have any thoughts on the zoning matter
Yes.
in front of us?
I was segueing right to that. This
Okay,
is why the
thank you.
zoning matters, absolutely. The difference between a 2-story and 4-story building is not cosmetic. It is the difference between meeting and continuing to fall short. The 2-story structure would severely limit capacity and functionality at a time when demand for women-only shelter and supportive space has never been higher. Importantly, the proposal for an additional 2 stories does not just provide more beds, it allows for better space, better planning, and better outcomes. There have been concerns related to the increased capacity, including medications on site, unsafeness of the clientele, and we can assure you that as the provider, with these additional spaces added, those concerns can be mitigated. The proposed adjustments also include areas of the loading space and waste disposal area. These areas will be at the rear of the building. We are ensuring that they're not at the front, outside of public view. And this will also minimize traffic congestion and visually put these areas out of the front of the building. Most importantly, with the zoning changes are the additional floors. I have to emphasize that these outdoor spaces, other planned amenities, they're essential, absolutely essential in order to create common spaces for clients and staff and additional shelter beds. This space provides congregate areas for clients to use, increases programming space, keeps clients engaged in meaningful activities, because a shelter is more than just a bed. These floors are absolutely critical to provide those adjunct and integrated services that Street Haven provides. The goal is to have these women within the community employed in a meaningful way and productive. So these shelter proposed changes are critical steps in preventing homelessness and ensure the shelter runs effectively as well as safely. So in closing, approving 4-story zoning amendments is not just a technical planning decision. It is a decision about whether our zoning enables us to respond to reality. Right now, the reality is this: there are more women seeking safety than there are spaces available, and the smaller, overcrowded buildings are not the answer. So I urge the committee to please approve the application as proposed zoning amendments at 3838 Bloor Street West. Thank you very much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Andrea. Are there any questions for Andrea? Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Thank you for your deputation. So just reading some of the letters that came in with this item, and one of the things that I noticed was that one of the residents or business owners, I think, wrote about the safety in the shared laneway or shared driveway, and I'm just wondering if you have any plans to address that.
Absolutely. So just to give a little context, the previous long-term care facility that was there had 10 parking spaces. We will have 3. And that won't even be for staff, and none of our clients will be using vehicles or house vehicles at the site. So we'll actually be reducing the traffic flow and the congestion. Also, as I mentioned, with the loading spaces and the stopping spaces for unloading and loading foods and critical supplies will be at the rear of the building, and that's part of the zoning changes, is to move those. So the congestion will be mitigated. The laneway will only be used for through traffic, and even that will be minimized, even less than previous use.
And is the laneway going to have certain anti-social behavior deterrents, like lighting, things like that, to keep like certain activities out of it?
Absolutely. I did see that concern as well, and it's a fair concern when you increase populations in an area. That is something that comes up. Access control is being planned very thoughtfully for the building, but also around the building. Absolutely, lighting. We will have 24/7 security around the building as well, really increasing the safety of the neighborhood. And it's not just for the shelter. That will protect the area in general. So the lighting, access control, security patrols around the area, and we're open to suggestions on any other improvements that we can do. But we are 61 years in shelter operations, so we're very experienced at how to keep shelters safe and the community safe with these buildings.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for the deputy? No? Andrea, thank you so much. And I understand from you that Grace doesn't need to speak? No? Grace? Okay.
Spoke on both
Thanks
of our
for being
behalves.
here, though.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I have Sobaida Duarte. Hello, can you hear me? Sobaida, I understand you're online. Can you speak up?
Hi.
Hey, there you are. Welcome. So you've got 5 minutes to address the committee. You can start as soon as you're ready.
Okay, so then I apologize to all of you because when I provide my phone number and attendant to this meeting, my intention was to be present, not to actively participate, but as a member of the Wedgwood Neighborhood Association, I have to obviously raise my voice regarding this. I hear and we understand as a community that there is a need for shelter, right? We don't deny that. However, what we are concerned is based on the experience other shelters have brought to the communities where they are located, right? So we are okay with the current size of the facility. What we are objecting is the increase of the capacity, okay? I understand that the intention is to provide more service to those that are not capable to help themselves, but my question and the question for the community is how 28 new beds will make a big difference, right? Neighbors are very worried about this. There are new business around the facility that are going to be impacted. We have schools, it's a high traffic, and moreover, what worries us also is the proximity to the hydro field that we want to avoid as much as possible having camping, right? And also, currently, we have a situation with some homeless in the area that have impacted negatively some business around the area. So that is our position, and this is why we said we are against the extension. We are okay with the size of the facility as it is today.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the deputant?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question, please?
Councillor Holiday, welcome. Certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Subida. It's Stephen Holiday, Councillor of Ward 2 at Etobicoke Centre. Thank you for speaking. Could you explain to the committee a little bit about the Wedgwood Association and who you are and how you know about this, this development project?
Okay, Wedgwood organization is a effort we did in the community to group neighbors to try to be a voice and representation to, in this case of situation, right? Is the proximity of members. We are around 70 to 80 members. The scope is Burnenter, South, Bloor, North, Kipling, West, and Ismo East, right?
Thank you. And it's safe to say for the committee members that aren't familiar, you are one of the local resident associations that are close to this shelter. I mean, that's your interest.
Correct.
Now, can you tell me, you know, with anything, people have different ideas and opinions, and there's different ideas about the use of the shelter that we're not talking about today, but there's also opinions on the changes. On balance, in the catchment area and the people that you've interacted with, would you say the majority of people are opposed to this or significantly? I mean, how would you describe that to the committee?
Well, in the fairness, right, because as I said before, we understand the necessity, right? But we also understand how this is going to impact. If I am fair, I will say that it's 70-30, 70% against, 30% in favor.
Thank you. One last question, just to help the committee members understand a little bit about the community. One of the criticisms I've heard is that there's very little parking being provided. If you're a business or a resident in this area, what options do you have if you need to have more parking than you can physically accommodate on your site? Or is there very many options?
The question goes to me?
Oh, yes, please, just to help the committee members understand from a local perspective.
Well, in the area, there are kind of 10 business, and the parking spot in the area is very limited, even for the current business. So then I assume the other options are going to be the street. There is no other option.
Correct. Thank you very much for speaking to the committee today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions for the deputant? Seeing none, we'll move along to our next deputant, Michelle Verhaven. Hi, Michelle, welcome. You can start whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Michelle Verhaven. Thank you for allowing me to address the committee this morning. It is with great understanding I speak to you regarding this topic. I have taken some time to look at the plans and the pictures and ideas proposed by the City of Toronto. It is phenomenal. The model proposed will give those in need and in crisis a chance to become a part of the community and begin their lives again, a chance to rebuild. No one sets out to be in a shelter. Some people in today's society call it the system. I was in a shelter. 2, in fact, since 2024. The first night I remember being in SHIP, Service Housing and Project. I cried. I was told that once you were in the system, you would never get out. Most were diagnosed with a mental illness or a drug addiction. I was neither. I was determined to get out of the shelter, and I did after the mandatory 14 days. I left for an Airbnb, taking no advice from the counselors, but setting out on my own. My life went on. I landed in Etobicoke South, renting a room through Sparrow, committing to volunteering in my newfound community at Daily Bread Food Bank while looking for employment. I became homeless once again this summer. After a month in another Airbnb in Mississauga, while keeping up volunteering during the day, and through a series of events, I was rescued and placed at Sacred Hand Canada. The night before, I prayed for a rescue, a miracle. Peel Regional Police brought me there. I was allowed to bring all my things and have a bed every night. Although it wasn't an open area, a shared space, I was stable, getting meals and a shower. In addition, I was given the opportunity to do my laundry. During my time in the shelter in the summer of 2025, I found a room to rent via roomies.ca, and then eventually I moved into my own apartment. For the first time in 3 years, I have what others would deem as very little. I have my own home, I have a community, I have a relationship, friends, I volunteer at the Assembly Hall, Princess Margaret Cancer Walk, and Journey to Conquer Cancer, in addition to the Carnival Wellness Run. While still looking for employment, I have rebuilt my life here in South Etobicoke. It is possible. Homelessness is not a statistic. It is human.
Michelle?
Providing
Michelle?
stability is what a
Michelle?
shelter should be.
Hi.
The definition of a shelter is a refuge, a home, offering safety to protect. When someone, anyone, single, couples, or family enter a shelter, it is for those reasons. To state that having a shelter in your community, in your neighborhood, is saying you don't want people to have a home, safety, or refuge. What is being proposed and offered is an answer to a problem that has become a plague on today's society. In one of the richest nations and one of the richest cities of the world, when we cannot house those in need and provide safety, a refuge, or protect those who are the most in need, then what are we saying about our city, our nation, or us as humanity? There is a saying that I learned when I was teaching preschool. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to help those in need. Ignoring and turning a blind eye to those in need explodes an already expansive situation. These proposed models are not offering just a night of solace and a meal. They are offering a transition from what has become uncertainty in people's lives. They are offering stability and freedom, the freedom to make choices that will give each person a chance to become productive and essential parts of the city in which they live, and to become an asset to the community in which they live, and to build their lives again. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate your sharing your personal story. I just want to remind members of the public, we're not debating whether shelters are good or bad here. We're looking at the zoning for this particular site.
Yep.
But we do appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well.
Any questions for Michelle? Councillor Myers.
Sorry.
Not a question, but a comment. Just thank you for sharing your story. It was very powerful and moving.
Thank you very much.
The next deputant we have is Thaddeus Sherlock. Welcome.
Testing. All good. All right. Thank you. My name is Thaddeus Sherlock. I work with I am deputing here on behalf of the South Etobicoke Shelter Support Network. You may otherwise know us as the Etobicoke Lakeshore Shelter Support Coalition, and we advocated last year for the shelter located 66 Third Street, which is now under construction. Anyways, regarding 3838 Bloor Street West, the site is currently zoned. It actually bisects two sites right now, which are zoned CL and second density residential under the former City of Etobicoke bylaw number 11,737. Mouthy, I know, but the latter classification does not currently permit dwellings above 2 stories. So it is essential that these parcels be brought into the amalgamated City of Toronto's official plan, and particularly the proposal conforms with the Etobicoke Centre secondary plan. It falls within mixed use area B, which allows for a range of commercial, residential, and institutional uses and pedestrian oriented heights along that section of Bloor Street West. The rezoning is fairly mild and seeks to only add a few stories to the structure. And the city is also seeking an exemption from the retail requirements in the secondary plan. So we support and urge the city and urge the committee to exempt the site from those retail requirements in order to build the planned HSCIS shelter to serve women surviving gender-based violence. Furthermore, the site while it is not directly served by a public transit route, it is close to a bus stop for 2 bus stops for the TTC and for MyWay, routes on Bloor Street West 49 and the MyWay Free at Auckland Bloor, and it is also served to the east by a bus stop serving the 45 Kipling, 945 Kipling Express and 46 Martin Grove bus routes, and the site is also in walking distance to Kipling Station on the TTC line and its various buses that serve that terminal, Kipling Transit Hub for the Mississauga Transit MyWay system and its various buses, and the Kipling Go station on the Milton Go line. As such, it would greatly benefit the residents to be within walking distance of this public transit and the new Etobicoke Civic Center and various buildings being constructed under the the Kipling Housing Now Toronto Builds proposal. As such, I think that will constitute a walkable, transit-oriented community that will serve future residents well, and it is essential that we upzone the site, both in order to fall within the secondary plan and to serve unhoused women who are experiencing intimate partner violence, gender-based violence, in order to bring dignity to them, to our city, and to generally advance the goals of the official plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Thaddeus? No? Thank you so much for your deputation. Next, I have Melissa Wong. Melissa, I understand you're online. Hi, Melissa, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Chair. Hello?
Yep, we gotcha.
Hello, Chair and members of the Planning and Housing Committee. My name is Melissa Wong. I am speaking today on behalf of Social Planning Toronto. We're a nonprofit and charitable organization dedicated to addressing inequity in our city through research, policy analysis, civic engagement, advocacy, and collaboration. And I'm here to speak in support of the proposal for rezoning and an official plan amendment at 3838 Bloor Street West, and also speak to why the proposed shelter is an appropriate use of the site. As you know, homelessness in Toronto is at a critical point. We simply do not have enough shelter space. Every night, over 150 people are turned away from the city's emergency shelter system. The city calls these individuals unmatched callers, but they are real people, women, men, and children, non-binary individuals that do not have a place to go when night falls. These are not people that only exist in downtown Toronto. They are individuals living in all parts of the city. And if they lose their housing or need to leave their home because it becomes unsafe, they need to be able to access shelters in their neighborhoods close to their community. Toronto is making progress to address this reality through the Homelessness Services Capital Infrastructure Strategy, a plan to build 1,600 permanent shelter spaces by 2033 that will create safe, secure shelter spaces that are integrated into local communities. Delaying the building of any of the shelters in this plan is truly a life and death decision. In Toronto, life expectancy for women experiencing homelessness is worsening. The median age at death has dropped from 44 years in 2022 to now 36 years in 2025. The staff recommendations in the report before you demonstrate that the proposed shelter is consistent with the city's planning policies for the local neighborhood, including the Etobicoke Centre secondary plan. The provincial policy statement calls for a full range of housing options in every community and emergency shelter, which this proposal fulfills. The proposal also conforms to the Toronto's official plan housing policies, as well as the built form and the public realm policies. The property is well served by transit, reducing the need for on-site parking. In reviewing the report, it is evident that the city staff have determined that the proposed building and the proposed use are a good fit for this location and a clear indication that this proposal should be approved by City Council. Over the past couple of years, we've seen local communities raise concerns that services for unhoused residents will somehow make their communities unsafe, or that their neighborhood is the wrong place for a shelter. I encourage these individuals to reach out to resident groups who have also held these views, but then were able to welcome new shelters and supportive housing into their neighborhoods, and have experienced how this type of housing can make a community home. We know these conversations can be hard and challenging when a change is coming to your neighborhood, and that's why we created a discussion guide to help have positive conversations about homelessness and help communities members to understand that homelessness is a systemic issue, not an individual issue, and how it can support and benefit neighborhoods by having more services available, not fewer. Across Toronto, we've seen that communities become safer when residents feel welcome, included, and are able to participate fully in community life. As members of the Planning and Housing Committee and City Council, you each have a responsibility to approve the recommendations in this report, not only because it includes a strong planning rationale, but also because it fulfills City Council's commitments to create safe, welcoming shelter spaces and that are integrated into local communities. We also encourage city staff to move quickly to remove the holding conditions so this shelter can be opened as soon as possible. In closing, I strongly support this application and we urge the committee to approve the report before you today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Melissa? Seeing none. Sorry, so this is for members of the committee to have questions. Seeing none, Melissa, thank you so much. The next deputant we have listed is B. Marie. B, hi, I understand you're online. Can you hear me?
I can. Are you able to hear me?
Hi, B, welcome.
Hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can. You've got 5 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I go by V, and I'm here to express my full support for the shelter project at 3838 Bloor Street West. This new shelter, which will be operated by Street Haven, an organization with more than 60 years of experience doing women-centered work, is such a critical step in preventing homelessness and making our city a better place to live for everyone. This zoning proposal is important, and I strongly support the additional floors, outdoor space, and other planned adjustments. I work as a communications officer for the Toronto Drop-In Network, where I do deeply meaningful community work with some of Toronto's most diverse and vulnerable folks. I volunteer in my community. I'm an active member in advocacy groups, all working towards a city where we can all thrive. And I wouldn't be able to do any of this work if I didn't have stable housing. And the truth of it is, like, for a long time, I didn't. I was unhoused. These zoning changes are essential in providing space for women to escape cycles of poverty. That's 4 stories where women can feel like they belong. I accessed permanent housing this January for the first time in 3 years. I'm a survivor of intimate partner violence, and I'm 3 years into my recovery journey. I was what is often referred to as hidden homeless. So I lived out of my backpack and I slept on couches and floors for 3 years. I couldn't escape the cycle of poverty that I was stuck in, and no one knew. People don't know what they can't see. But with this, we have an opportunity. The proposed outdoor space is important for shelter staff and clients' well-being. I think that we can all agree that access to outdoor space is important for everyone. And I think it's also important that we recognize, like, prioritizing well-being over parking is important. Having loading space and waste disposal areas at the rear of the building makes sense. There are lots of businesses and restaurants and residential buildings that have this. This is something that's very doable in Toronto. So a shelter can have this too. It will create space for safety in and around the building. And the additional floors just provide space for people. It seems really contradictory for people to say that they don't want to see people on the street and then also oppose additional floors at a shelter. There's so many women and gender diverse people in our city who share a story just like mine. And sadly, it's not a unique experience. There are so many women and trans and non-binary folks without secure permanent housing. The median age of death of an unhoused woman in our city is 36 years old, and that's devastating. That's systemic failure, not individual failure. And I fully appreciate that shelters are only one key element of preventing homelessness in our city. There's so many moving parts, but it's an entry point for permanent housing. And these proposed changes, that makes that possible for so many women. You have an opportunity today to demonstrate what true leadership is, right? Prioritizing and championing for people in Toronto, not just some of them, but all of them. And our neighbors who are seeking safety and shelter are just that. They're our neighbors, and they're no less worthy of compassion and care. So I'm asking you to please support the shelter project at 3838 Bloor Street West and prioritize the safety and dignity of women in need. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Bea. Are there any questions? Councillor Myers.
Again, not a question, just a thank you for coming and sharing your story. Yes, it does matter when people come and share their lived experiences with the committee, and I thank you for your bravery and courage.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bea. That was very helpful. We'll move to the next deputant, Callum Houston. Good morning, Callum. If you swipe the button in front of you till it turns green.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. Thank you for listening to me speak. My name is Callum Houston. I'm from Don Valley East, and I'm here to speak in favor of the zoning recommendations. I support any shelters that are going, especially those to help women who are looking for need shelter and to escape domestic violence. The shelter is already permitted. It's now just getting rid of the real estate part of it. So I support again the recommendations, and urge council to continue, or committee to continue expanding these shelters. The more we have, the better it is. It allows people to get back on their feet, to get supports for whatever issues that they may be facing. I don't understand how we can expect people to do everything on their own when so much is thrown at us. A lot of people benefit from the shelter system when housing continues to become more unaffordable, and the price of groceries are going up and jobs are withering away. So yes, for the fourth time, I support the recommendations here in the report. And I'm gonna see my time because there's probably more qualified speakers to talk.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for Callum? No? Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. Rachel Chen. Rachel, I understand you're online.
Yes.
There you go. Hi, welcome.
Hello. Hi. Thanks again for having me. I'm Rachel, and I am here as a member. I am here as a member of More Neighbors Toronto, which is a volunteer organization of housing advocates. I'm wearing this shirt. There we go. I'm speaking in favor of this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment because, as the chair always emphasizes, this isn't a meeting about whether or not a shelter should be built, but a rezoning application. As another More Neighbors volunteer has said in their letter, Toronto has too many contradicting policies, adding layers of confusing, unnecessary bureaucracy that are supposed to make it easier for us to build things, but instead keep leading to meetings like this one that seem to allow for more tension to build within the city between people who do and do not support building shelters. This leaves people who need housing waiting, and it's a life or death sentence for so many of them. So given the existing policy, the mixed use land area, that this is in the Etobicoke Center area and also PMTSAA, I have no other words to describe this bureaucracy but as silly. And so I please urge the committee to approve this motion so the shelter can be built as soon as possible with 4 stories without the need for retail, etc. Like we create our own rules, and going forward, I would like the city to stop getting in its own way to become a better city. And that is all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Rachel? No, seeing none. Rachel, thank you for your deputation today. Next, I have Peter Martin. I saw Peter. There he is. Hi, Peter. Welcome again.
So I'm sure it will come as no surprise that the Toronto Alliance to End Homelessness is fully in support of this proposal. I'm the Housing Solutions Manager for the organization. There's a number of things that need to be recognized here in relation to both the official plan and the zoning bylaws and the amendments which are before you. The shelter itself is a permitted use in this on this site, and the use of itself is a compatible use with the commercial and residential neighborhood that it's in. I'd also like to point out that it's the opinion of staff that there is not necessarily a need for this official plan amendment, that the current use is compatible with the official plan with regard to the community space that's going to be incorporated into this building. But out of an abundance of caution, the recommendation is that there be an OPA for this. I'd also note that the proposal before you conforms not only to the official plan's housing policy, but also with regard to its built form. In terms of the height of the building that's being proposed, the increase of height to 4 stories, I'd note a number of things. One is that this is it's non-trivial, but it's not a significant increase in height when you look at the permissions as of right on this site. For example, up to 6 stories for the residential component, let alone the additional height on the front part of the site where the avenue's zoning is relevant. I'd also point out that it is in a protected major transit station area, and the city, following the direction of the provincial government, is moving to amend the bylaws to allow even higher density on sites such as this. And I would suggest that a 4-story building on this site has far less of an impact on the neighborhood than a 20-story building, which would ultimately be permitted under the major transit station area zoning that's anticipated. There have been some concerns about privacy, but these are, I think, vitiated by the design elements with regard to the rear portion of the building. There will be few windows. There will be light wells to provide light, but not direct oversight of residential neighborhoods. And also the fact that there was a long-term care site as a previous use, long-term care building as a previous use on this site. My understanding is it had approximately 16 residents. And I would just make the point that when you look at staff to resident ratios for a long-term care home compared to a shelter, it's a little over twice the number of residents, but the staff to resident ratio is not going to be doubling. It's probably going to be quite similar. And as such, the issue of congestion is not necessarily a novel one. We're replacing one use with a certain level of congestion with another use with a similar level. Also, I'd point out that there's also a difference between a long-term care home and a shelter. We're not going to be having visitors using the space, and the staff are generally going to be using transit to come to their place of work. Finally, I'd just like to highlight something that was in the More Neighbours Toronto deputation about some of the concerns about the tensions between newer city policies and older secondary plans. As a recovering lawyer, I can tell you that statutory interpretation is that the new ousts the old. And I think that there needs to be a recognition while we're going through these transitional periods when these changes are being implemented and amended, that the general intent with regard to this type of site and zoning pertaining to shelters should be recognized and taken into consideration, notwithstanding the fact that those amendments have not yet reached council. Unless there are any questions, those are my submissions.
Thank you, Peter. Councillor Nunziata has a question for you.
Yeah, so just a question. So previously it was a long-term care facility, you said? Okay, and I didn't hear how many beds?
From my understanding of doing some research online, there were 16 beds and 14 washrooms. So I assume that there were 16 residents, and that's the minimum anyway. So.
And then family, of course, coming to visit, right?
Yes, exactly. So you have people coming to visit, and now that's not necessarily going to be happening in relation to the shelter.
So. Was it a private long-term care that was there previously, or like
I do not know.
Just leave, or did you know what?
I do not know the nature of that, but I would just point out that irrespective of the ownership, we're talking about people coming to the site, whether it's one or the other, and that those visits as visitors will decrease by definition. And as I was stated earlier, the ratio of staff, the number of staff, I should say, that will be in the shelter, it would probably be a fairly reasonably equal number or equivalent number to the staff for the long-term care home, even though there's 40 as opposed to 16. the ratio of staff would be higher, I think, reasonably expected for a long-term care facility.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Peter? I see your recovering lawyer joke chased Councillor Myers out of the room.
Thank you.
The final deputant I have listed is Leslie Gash.
Good morning, Chair Perks and members of the Planning and Housing Committee. My name is Leslie Gash. I'm the Executive Director of the Toronto Shelter Network. TSN connects and supports Toronto's homelessness service providers and prioritizes working alongside people with lived experience of housing, ensuring their voices, insights, and needs shape how services... Oh, sorry. Okay. How services are designed and delivered. Together, we support emergency shelters, respites, and women's 24-hour drop-ins across Toronto to more effectively meet the needs of people experiencing homelessness. This is one of 6 municipal shelters put forward in July 2025 as part of the Homelessness Services Capital Infrastructure Strategy's 10-year plan to deliver 20 new purpose-built shelters containing 1,600 permanent beds by 2033. All 6 sites are already zoned to permit municipal shelters as of right. The amendments for 3838 Bloor are required to accommodate site-specific standards such as height and removing the requirement for retail at grade. We need to continue to expedite the redevelopment of city-owned sites and acquire new sites in all wards of the city. We're encouraged to see that the amendments have been drafted to ensure each site can be repurposed to become supportive or affordable housing as community needs evolve in the future. I'm here to speak in support of the zoning bylaw amendment for 3838 Bloor Street West, which is necessary to enable the proposed shelter operated by Street Haven to function effectively on this site. From a planning and operational perspective, our member agencies have consistently seen that adequate indoor and outdoor spaces are critical to how shelter sites function on a day-to-day basis. When buildings are designed with sufficient common areas and programming space, activities are able to take place within the site rather than in surrounding public areas. This supports a more efficient use of the site and helps reduce pressures on sidewalks and nearby properties. The proposed additional floors are important to make the building function well. They create space for indoor common areas for clients and staff, along with properly designed outdoor space. By locating the outdoor space on higher levels and orienting it toward Bloor Street rather than nearby homes, the design helps reduce overlook and limits visual impacts on the surrounding residential area. These spaces support daily activities and help create a sense of community on site, keeping activity within the building rather than the surrounding public realm. Just as importantly, they allow the building to function as a complete, well-functioning site where programming, recreation, and social connection can happen in appropriate, dedicated spaces. From a planning standpoint, these design choices contribute to a more predictable and well-managed site. For the surrounding community, this means fewer impacts in adjacent public spaces, reduced congestion at the front entrance, and a building that is better integrated into its context. For residents, it means access to spaces that support routine, connection, and stability, elements that are directly shaped by the physical design of the building. The site layout further reflects good planning practice. Locating, loading, servicing, and waste areas at the rear of the building reduces visual impact along Bloor Street and helps maintain safer, more consistent traffic flow while keeping these functions out of primary public view. Overall, the requested zoning changes support a development that is well organized, functional, and responsive to its surroundings. They help enable a building that fits well within its context, operates effectively, and minimizes impacts while creating well-designed, meaningful spaces for the people who use it. We support the recommendations in this report and urge the committee to adopt them. This is a sound process and sound planning. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Leslie? Seeing none. Leslie, thank you so much. That completes our list of deputants. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor
Mr. Chair.
Holiday.
Thank you. May I proceed?
Yep.
Thank you. To staff, can you confirm you can open a shelter at this site today? Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, you could.
Why have you not opened a shelter today?
To you, Chair. This site was acquired We could open a shelter there today. However, we're undertaking redesign and redevelopment so that we can accommodate more people on the site, to adhere to our shelter guidelines and assist more people getting out of the shelter hotels that we are desperate to leave.
So, Mr. Tanner, this site was acquired with the intention to build something bigger from day one. Is that correct?
The site was acquired with an understanding of what could be possible on the site. It did meet our requirements in terms of space, and that's why it was acquired.
Thank you. Can staff tell me, and I'm sorry, I don't know who to direct the question to, if the building is proposed at 13.9 meters in height, why is the permission being granted for 19 meters?
Through the chair, as we were evaluating the proposal, we were looking at the route the city has taken in terms of a certain number of factors. So for major streets for apartment buildings, one of our standards that the city has brought forward is that 19 meters is appropriate on those sites. I would also say that if you were to look to the front portion of the site that is mixed use, there we actually could support taller heights along an avenue of a one-to-one relationship with Bloor, up to 27 meters, but we decided to keep it at 19 because it was consistent with that major streets directive. It's also in a
the presentation to the public through the consultation process was for a 13.9 meter building. Is that correct?
Through the chair, the plans show a 13 or a 14 meter building, but our zoning bylaw has been consistently at 19 meters since the first round of revision.
I know, but I want to be clear. The proposal that was shown to the public was 13.9 meters.
Through the chair, that's correct. And a reminder, and it's in our staff report, that the height permission on the site is 15 meters today.
Thank you. But I just want to make sure the committee understands what was shown to the public. So it was 13.9.
In terms of the architectural drawings, that's correct. And in terms of the bylaw, which was the subject of the proposal, that was at 19 meters.
Can someone confirm the procedure that is envisioned to deal with waste? Number of speakers told about waste at the rear of the building, but I think this building is up on stilts at the back where it connects the lane. So how does the waste work? That's stored in the rear of the site.
Through the chair, there's the proposal is for private pickup, which would be able to function underneath the portion that's elevated. So it would come into the rear lot. I would say, though, that garbage pickup is something that we're going to continue to evaluate at site plan. It isn't fixed through this process.
Should there be a change in the waste pickup arrangements, do I understand it correctly that that could mean that the waste would have to be carted through the lane and placed onto the adjacent side street, nowhere near actually this building?
Through the chair, there's several options for pickup. Right now, the way the plaza functions, pickup is off of Bloor Street West. So another option would be to have pickup off of Bloor Street as well.
And so finally, the last question, could you help articulate a little bit more to the committee about what the secondary plan asks for at ground level with respect to retail, and why the secondary plan would envision those requirements?
Through the chair, I'm just trying to pull up the exact language, but essentially what the mixed-use B area designation does is, and specifically to our official plan amendment, it's looking for a continuous pedestrian retail strip. Again, the existing condition of this building is not one that provides that continuous pedestrian retail strip. We evaluated this proposal very carefully to assess whether an official plan amendment was necessary. Out of an abundance of caution, we've gone this route, but again, reflecting that existing condition, and not just of this building, but of adjacent buildings along this strip. There are other uses that aren't just predominantly retail, and I think the proposal here to include that community space at the front of the building also serves to animate the public realm and satisfy that policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? No, seeing none. Does anyone? Oh, Councillor Crescenti, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions for clarification. So the site was, I heard, was acquired, of course. So, but when was it acquired? How long have we owned it? And is it under any due diligence if this is a current acquisition?
Thanks. Through the chair, the site was acquired sorry, 1 second. We closed June 27th, 2025.
Okay.
The acquisition is fully completed and there are no existing open conditions or requirements related to the acquisition.
All right, so we're looking to add 2 more stories. Is it currently being used right now for a shelter of any kind? No.
No.
It's not. What have we been doing with this since 2025? With the building?
So the building has been vacant between those time periods as we undertake community consultation design and are before the committee today seeking zoning approvals to move towards construction.
So the capacity will be, once this is approved, for a maximum of how many units in total? 60
women in shelter beds.
60 women in shelter beds. And there was a question about parking. What is the current parking on the site now? Is there some parking available currently?
Through the chair, there's 3 parking spots in the rear of the building.
3. And for a 2-story building, okay. And so with 60 occupants, is there a plan to increase the number of parking spots?
Through the chair, I'll just speak to the bylaw first and say that through section 34, 1.1 of the Planning Act, in a protected major transit station area, we're not allowed to impose any parking standards, so there's no minimums here. And then perhaps I'll pass it over to our colleagues.
And to you, Chair, there's no plans to increase the number of parking spots at site. Many of our shelters have no parking spots at them.
Okay, so there's an assumption that with 60 people living in the shelter, that there won't be a requirement that no one's going to have additional vehicles of their own to require parking.
Very, very rarely are we working with people that have access to their own vehicle. In the rare event that we were to encounter that issue, we would make arrangements for a longer term parking elsewhere.
Is there currently any retail space operating on the first floor?
There is not.
There is not, okay. So that requirement, the other part of this recommendation is to remove any requirement for any retail. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Question.
Councillor Nunziata.
Yeah, just to go back to the parking. We have towers going up for 30 stories and we have no parking, correct? In the city?
Through the chair, that is correct in any circumstances.
Because I have a number of towers in my ward over 30 stories and they don't have 1 parking space. Is the reason for the to go up 2 stories is to provide more amenity space and indoor community space for the tenants, for the residents, and to have opportunities for cooking and, you know, is that the reason?
Yes, to Chair, additional space for sleeping, additional amenity space, programming space, life skills programming, that kind of thing, you bet.
Okay, so it would occupy, well, let's just say the 2 Buttonwood that I'm going through, which is 8 stories, women's shelter. There's space for computer rooms, community space, kitchens, and, you know, so that's the reason you want to go up to 2 stories, correct?
To Chair, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay, now there's been a number of consultation meetings. Now, at any of the consultation meetings, was there ever a suggestion to have a community liaison committee like we did for 2 Buttonwood?
So to you, Chair, yes, that's a core part of when we have these meetings is to talk about, what are the future opportunities to be involved as this shelter is developed and before it opens. And we will be opening or establishing a community liaison group similar to what we're doing at 2 Buttonwood.
And that will be with local residents and, okay, and they will be involved with the design and the community space indoors and whatever other issues that the community has?
There will be opportunity.
Be active in that.
To you, Chair, that's correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? No, seeing none. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor
Mr.
Holiday?
Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make sure that the committee knows, as the local councillor, I can tell you that my experience in speaking to people about this shelter on balance is that the majority are opposed to the changes that are before you. Now, I know you had a number of deputations today, and many people, frankly, that don't live in the neighborhood and maybe with an affiliation to the sector came out and made the case for shelters in the city. And I don't think anyone here is debating those statements because that's not what is in front of you. It is whether or not the expansion that's proposed on this site is appropriate. The other thing that the committee is clearly aware of because of the answers to the questions and is plain is it does not seem to be a successful site unless the city has the opportunity to expand it. Otherwise, they would have opened a shelter already. And that puts the city in an incredibly awkward place to make a decision, and some would say conflicted. And I think you see that in some of the materials that were posted regarding this decision that's before the committee. The city is both the developer and the governing authority that grants the land use changes. And, these processes are fraught with concerns over public confidence and decision-making, and that is one key element that I want you to think about. In terms of parking, I think it's important to talk about a few details on this. This is a larger expanded use on the site. More people, you can imagine how many workers there may be. Could that be about 15 for a shelter this size? We didn't have time to go into those questions, but one can draw reasonable conclusions. A person with just any critical thinking could understand that there will be some demand on parking. Some people have said, well, the clients won't use parking there. I don't know how anyone can say that. Shelter users may have cars. They may need them to go to work or to take care of the tasks that they do, especially in a suburban location. So to assume that no one has any is a concern. To assume that all the workers won't drive to work and take public transit, I think, is a concern. But the reality is, unlike other urban locations, there are very, very few parking options for a longer term near this. What I mean by more than a couple of hours, more than a casual visit. And I believe the check I did was it was in and around a kilometer away. And unlike urban locations, you can't just leave it on the street or look for some green pea for your shift. So to me, that is a big flaw in the site and a flaw in considering a larger, more intensive use. If you want to know what the existing parking conditions are to serve a retirement residence that is much smaller in scale, just look on the aerial views and you'll see that there was parking right across the front of the building. And I think there's even some imagery of cars into the rear. The other really important thing before the committee is an official plan change. This is not just a zoning, a few extra inches here or there, some changes in setbacks. This is a fundamental change to the vision of Bloor Street. And Bloor Street has been thought of as a retail, walkable street, a Main Street type area that is absolutely necessary to sustain the future growth envisioned for the 6 Points Etobicoke Centre secondary plan area. And putting a residential use, which is a shelter, which is very private and inward facing, violates that vision. It's not an active use on Bloor Street. And so that's why that's before you as an official plan change, and the committee and council is going to have to consider whether it creates an exemption and what that means for the overall site. I think you've heard from the community members and most certainly in the correspondence that on balance, people are concerned about making a larger building and a more intensive use work on this site. So the question is not whether shelters are needed around the city. The question is whether an expanded use is appropriate on this site. And I think what you should pay attention to is what the local community is telling you, because they know the building, they know the site, and they're telling you not to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the item? Councillor Nunziata?
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm pleased to hear from staff that they will have a community liaison committee. I think that's very important. When we're going through my shelter, my ward, which is on the main street, it's 8 stories, women and children. And we've had a number of meetings and it's been very successful. We actually involved with the design, the colors, and and so the community feels that they're very engaged, and they're offering some space for the community as well. So that really works, and I'm glad that the staff are going to be doing that with this site. And I know it's difficult when there's a shelter going in anybody's ward, but I think what's really important is if you work with the community and you get the residents involved, I think that the community comes together and they support and they understand the need. And so I think this site, you can go up 6 stories on this site actually if you wanted to, but you're going up 4 stories. So I will move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Nunziata has moved. Does anyone else wish to speak? No? How about we do a recorded vote on this one? All those in favor? Councillor Myers, Councillor Perks, Councillor Nunziata, Councillor Crisanti, Councillor Bradford, Councillor Matlow. So that's unanimous. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, that takes us now to PH 30.6, Building Toronto's Housing Future Housing Development Office 2026 Annual Toronto Builds Update and 3-year Work Plan. We have a couple of deputations. Mark, I thought I saw you. Is Mark Richardson here? There he is. Hey, Mark, come on up.
All right, councillors, can you hear me okay? Thank you. I'm Mark Richardson. I am the volunteer technical lead with Housing Now TO. We've been tracking affordable housing projects in the city of Toronto for the last 7.5 years now. We're generally quite happy with the work plan and everything that you're seeing before you today. Our one concern is with some of the tracker materials. As members of council who are also members of the Create TO board, you will be remembering that there is something called the milestone report that Create TO produces, which has quite a lot of detail in it. That data also gets shared out and moved over into the open data systems here at the City of Toronto, which then feeds your housing data hub for tracking purposes. So one of the ways that we sort of, help to keep an eye on some of these projects and make sure that they're meeting your targets is by tracking that milestone report. In the new 3-year work plan, some of that data is being lost from this report, and I think that may have happened due to staff changes and reorganizations. We're just really hoping that there is still the open data that contains all of the information, like the first time you applied to CMHC for a particular site, the initial dates that you talked about proposing this site to start construction or start occupancy. There's going to be probably some changes around council this year. We want to make sure that whoever's at council next year has the most accurate data available and has some of that history and can compare what we were doing in 21 with what we're doing in 2026. So in general, we're very supportive of this. We've noticed a couple of typos in here. There's one site that says that it's looking at occupancy in 2026. You only just broke ground on it with TCHC 3 months ago. It's not going to happen in 2026. By putting this data into the public domain, letting the community look at it, we will help to improve the communications and the quality within government and between governments. I was in Ottawa the other day, sitting with folks from Minister Robertson's office, sitting with folks from the Prime Minister's office who are trying to figure out Toronto housing solutions and how best to work their new programs like Build Canada Homes with entities like yours. Open, transparent, proactive disclosure of your data and your information makes all of that communications easier. It lets us help you. So we would like to ensure that there's some sort of motion to make sure that the Housing Development Office in this plan more closely aligns with all the work that was done with Create.to, the open data community, and the Housing Data Hub. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mark? Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks, Mark. Just a quick question. Generally, you sort of talked about this generally, but can you give specific examples as to why it's important to track the data consistently?
If you put the information of this is when we first submitted a site to CMHC, when we go to Ottawa, we can poke the Ottawa folks about why CMHC is taking 5 years to respond to a submission. When you post something about a expected construction start date and you don't get to that construction start date, sometimes it's an internal challenge here, sometimes it's a challenge with another level of government where you're having to do an easement for a hydro line or something like that. We can help nudge those things along. And transparency, sunlight is the best disinfectant, but it's also the best way for stopping miscommunication about affordable housing projects. We're going into an election cycle this year. There are some people who are going to use the proposal of affordable housing or the success or failure of meeting certain numbers on affordable housing to create crazy pages on Facebook and various websites. The more you have accurate data that's publicly available, the better it is for everybody involved because we have a single source of the truth.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? I just want to highlight, Mark gave very good advice. Don't take voting intention advice from Facebook. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I have Peter Martin.
I was thinking of speaking on the mayor's multiplex thing, but I think twice is enough for you today. First off, I just want to say this is a really great milestone for Development and Growth Services area to have the Housing Development Office up and running so quickly is something to be proud of. Congratulations to you. And we think it's really important to recognize that in holding the Toronto Builds policy framework, one of the things which we found really important about the Toronto Builds framework is the emphasis on not only affordable housing, but supportive housing.
I understand the room.
One of the things that we're very happy about is that there's been a bit of a sea change at the city in the last couple of years to recognize that supportive housing is its own creature, its own beast, and can't really be subsumed within affordable housing in terms of tracking. We're really happy to see it's now being tracked on its own. Hoping to get towards that 18,000 goal by 2030. We'll see how close we get. But the fact that we're, reinforcing what Mark was just saying, having these things as active trackers makes it much easier for us to see where the problems are, what we can do to facilitate the city and the not-for-profit sector together working to achieve these targets and goals. One of the things that's really great about the Toronto Builds Policy Framework is the recognition of the importance of collaborating with the Toronto Alliance to End Homelessness in working towards achieving these goals. And I point out that there was a reference in the report for action on this item about a very successful series of workshops that the Toronto Alliance put on with both the Housing Secretariat and the Housing Development Office recently to go over the history of city not-for-profit partnerships and to look at things that worked, things that weren't so good, and to come up with some new ideas and positive feedback for the city to use in generating a new policy framework for city-led projects and city-supported projects with the not-for-profit sector. We look forward to building on that initial collaboration, very much so. One thing I will point out that I'm really happy about is the work plan, but not perhaps for the reasons that you think. We've been looking for a long time in the sector to have some clear guidance as to where we are going in the future with regard to the sequence of RFPs moving forward that are going to be of interest to the affordable and supportive housing sectors. Because, of course, we don't want to have unnecessary competition. It costs a lot of money and time to do an RFP, and if we in the sector can look at this timeline and have some reasonable conversations about, allocation within the sector as to which is the more appropriate project, we can then have, I think, a much more efficient process because, by definition, there'll be a fewer number of RFPs for the city to go through, so we get to that next stage quicker. And as I said before, the cost and the time expended, which is a really salient factor in the not-for-profit sector, will be regularized in a better way. Finally, in regard to regularizing the process, we're also looking forward to working with the Housing Development Office, building on the work we did in that workshop, to provide some feedback and a foundation for a conversation with the sector on ways in which we can do for the whole development process, particularly with regard to not-for-profit housing, that the city did in creating the Development Review Department itself. It can be very frustrating and time-consuming and costly for the developments in the not-for-profit sector, delays which we feel are systemic and not project-based, where we could have a smoother communication system between the different departments on specific applications and move things through more quickly. So I'm very much looking forward, Hugh, to working with you and Aviva in the future on these things. Unless there are any questions, those are my submissions.
Thanks, Peter. I just wanted, so you raised an interesting thing, which is the working relationship between the public service and social housing providers. And I take your point that that relationship has to continue to improve. I just want to get a sense, like where we were, say, 5 years ago to where we are now. What kinds of moves that we have made have improved that? And where could we do better?
Well, the rental housing fund approach has made a big difference. Archie is good. I actually applaud some of the innovative approaches that the city has done to try and build more purpose-built rental. The the solution to the problem is not just to build more affordable and supportive housing, but to build more housing overall. We recognize now from some very interesting data out of Europe that even building high-end rental accommodations results in vacancy chains where people move up to what they prefer to get to. And even by the third or fourth link in that chain, you're opening up affordable housing to people on low incomes. So everything the city is doing in the last few years has really made a sea change from our perspective on facilitating building more housing in general, but also focusing on supportive and affordable, deeply affordable housing. Some of the ideas are innovative and exciting. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with the city from a position of optimism. We may not reach the targets that were set for the 2020-2030 Housing Action Plan, but we are certainly going to support the city in doing all we can to achieve them and, if possible, to exceed them.
Thank you. Any other questions for Peter? Peter, as always, thank you so much for your advice.
Thank you.
I believe that completes the deputations on this item. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Myers.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I guess my first question is just looking through the 3-year work plan, I noticed that there were no projects proposed for all of North Scarborough, which includes Scarborough Agincourt, Scarborough North, and I guess the portion of Scarborough Rouge that is north of the 401. So could staff just give an explanation as to why there's no projects in this entire catchment area?
Through the chair, I can't give explicit explanation why that particular area wasn't chosen, but we did look in creating the prioritization of projects to try to diversify where we are allocating capital.
Okay.
I'm going to pause your time. We just have to be a little careful. There's some confidential stuff that lists.
This is all public.
Yeah. I'm just reminding the rest of the members of the committee. Keep going.
So I guess what are staff doing to prioritize or get projects in this area for these residents off the ground?
We would evaluate all of the projects across the city using a variety of criteria. And should a project in that particular ward fit high on that list, then we would allocate capital accordingly.
So is there not a staff, I guess, consideration that geography has to be a criteria in terms of affordable housing should be evenly spread so that people don't have to leave their communities in order to live there?
Staff definitely does consider the diversification of capital allocation across the city, especially where the city is integrated, where they intend to have growth.
So I guess what would be the plan going forward to make sure that in the next 3-year update that there is some affordable housing located in this area?
I cannot at this moment describe the process to identify particular sites in that ward on how we would push that forward.
Not that ward, that catchment area. So
that
this
catchment
is all
area.
Scarborough Agincourt, Scarborough
Right.
North, and Scarborough Rouge Park.
I can't describe a process at this moment to necessitate that capital be allocated to that catchment area.
Okay. Chair, if I could assist a little to say that I certainly agree with the Executive Director. But we are, from a staff perspective, looking at the opportunity to create more opportunities in areas that are where we don't have quite as much development happening from an affordable housing perspective. That is something that we are actively looking at and considering as how we could create more opportunity.
Thank you. And turning gears a bit, I just want to go back on May 21st and 22nd, 2025. City Council directed the DCM, Development and Growth Services, to work in consultation with the ED of Social Development to achieve the 10% equity targets in all Toronto Builds projects and to develop criteria informed by community benefits framework, best practices for including mandatory equity hiring targets in small-scale Toronto building projects, and to report back by the third quarter of 2025 as part of the implementation report. So I guess where are we on this reporting work?
Through the chair, I'll assist as much as I can on this. What I know is that we do have that requirement built into any developments that the city is participating in. I don't have the data specifically that I could draw on at this point and answer your question completely, but what I know is that that is a number that not only that we are tracking, but ensuring that we are requiring as part of any city-led developments.
Thank you. So I guess in sort of keeping with some of the questions I was asking Mark when he came, how are we tracking the number of community benefits that are created in these projects? In terms of jobs created, in terms of whether or not they're reaching their equity hiring targets?
Through the chair, as part of the Toronto Builds framework, we do have specifications on targets that each proponent must achieve. So it would be built into the agreements with those proponents, and then we could be able to collect the data from that information.
And is this information publicly reported? And if so, where?
I could not answer that question at this moment.
However, and through the chair, we can look into that and get back to you, Councillor.
Thank you. Is anyone here from the public benefits group that can maybe answer that?
You're at time, Councillor.
No.
You can set up a second round if you have more, but
no, that's it.
Through the chair, and I'll just reinforce that we can look back at the information and report back to you on that question, Councillor. I don't think we have the information to give you a wholesome answer at this point, though.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Bradford.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. I have a motion here I submitted to staff, which is to request that the list of projects that were included in our Build Canada Home submission be shared with councillors when this item goes to council. So we have partial information on a few of the projects, but I think it's important that we have all of the information, all of those details to inform our deliberation and consideration of the recommendations in the confidential report. That's it.
Questions of the mover? No? Okay. Anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Myers.
Thank you. I'm just moving a motion. That City Council requests the ED Housing Development Office to work with Creatio, Toronto Community Housing Corporation, the Chief Technology Officer, Technology Services, and Industry and Civic Tech and Community Benefits experts to ensure all data related to the Toronto Builds and the Toronto Housing Data Hub is produced and provided to the public in alignment with the City of Toronto open data policies. And this is just consistent with the questions I had regarding community benefits reporting and also the questions I had to Mark Richardson.
Questions of the mover? Seeing none, anyone else wish to speak? No? Why don't we take the amendments in the main item all as a package? All those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay. We are moving along. Lost my place. Redevelopment framework for 835 through 841 Queen Street East. We have a deputant. Why heavens, it's Mark Richardson.
It's a rare three-peat day for me. I just need to get them all in before you stop being chair planning and housing. Members of the Planning and Housing Committee, our HousingNowTO.com project volunteers are happy to provide general support to the start of this new redevelopment framework for the existing Wood Green Community Services site, which is located at 835-841 Queen Street East, which, as you can see from this map on the screen, is less than 150 meters from the Leslieville station on the Ontario line, which, God willing, is expected to open in the early 2030s. This is a well-located site. It is a rare opportunity where an experienced nonprofit housing provider owns a prime site located inside a provincially protected major transit station area. These are unicorn sites. Our only concern with this item is that the City of Toronto staff comment, based on analysis completed by Create.to on behalf of the Housing Development Office, a building of 6 to 10 stories is being explored for further review on this site. While we agree that rapidly developing new affordable and workforce housing projects near existing transit services are vital to the future well-being of our city for all Torontonians, we are concerned that some local considerations politically and some very old legacy planning policies on Queen Street are unreasonably restricting the potential opportunities available to Wood Green and the Housing Development Office to propose a more substantial affordable housing redevelopment solution inside this prime protected major transit station area site. In fact, we would encourage the council, direct the Housing Development Office and Create.to to work with Wood Green Community Services to develop a model at 835 Queen Street East in Leslieville that much more closely aligns with the current Parkdale Hub Phase 1 site, also known as Parkdale People's Place, that they are developing with nonprofit partners at 16 stories and 175 new rental apartments. Thanks to the good work of Chair Perks, the Parkdale site is also located on Queen Street in a traditionally low-rise section of urban Toronto, but the main difference is the site in Parkdale is not located within 150 meters of a brand new transit station. It is not inside a PMTSA. You have a great opportunity in Leslieville. You need to let staff free of local constraints to see what they can actually do on a site like this inside a PMTSA. As always, our open data and civic tech volunteers are happy to answer any questions the committee or city staff may have on affordable housing development best practices, on how to make effective use of transit-oriented lands like this fantastic site to help alleviate Toronto's rental housing crisis with nonprofit partners. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Mark.
Sure.
Okay, so if we can keep this up.
Yep.
So in the foreground there is the Parkdale Hub proposal.
Yep.
What's the pink thing behind it?
The pink thing is a taller building. It's a TCHC building that was built in the 1970s. There are taller buildings and apartment buildings that have been built in Leslieville, not necessarily on Queen Street, at around about the same era.
Right. And I don't know if you read the zoning report on this site, but it was explicit that because the adjacent building was a tall building, that we could build, if you notice, it steps back, that back piece was because there was already a tall building adjacent. Is that the case on the site in front of us? Is that the case on the site in front of us?
It's a different site, but this site is also inside a PMTSA. It's owned outright by a nonprofit.
I'm not asking about PMTSAs. I'm not asking about that. I'm saying for both the one you've got on the screen now and the one under consideration, what we're doing in terms of planning is looking at the site context. Is there a tall building behind this site?
No, but the next building over on Queen Street is fairly substantial, and it was done 12 years ago. The context of planning in the city has changed in those 12 years. So it's not the south side buildings are not tall, but the adjacent buildings on Queen Street, I think, are in the 10 to 12 range, but they only have a little bit of affordable housing. If you want to deliver a lot of affordable housing on this site, you're going to have to supersize your fries as always.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mark? No, seeing none. Does anyone wish to speak to the item? No? Okay, I'll just move it. All those in favor, opposed, that carries. Okay. Item number 8, Mid-Rise Housing Implementation Initiative Proposals Report. We have a couple of deputants. Claire Malcolmson is first. Welcome, Claire.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
Still morning. Okay, so I'm Claire Malcolmson. I'm a representative of the Mid-Rise Advocacy Group, which is a collection of architects, planners, and city builders who are working together to advocate for reforms for mid-rise buildings as described in the mid-rise manual. I actually have some printed. I just picked them up if anyone wants some copies of our mid-rise manual. Which advocates for changes at 3 different levels of government in order to help get mid-rise built. So we're focusing on the City of Toronto because this is a progressive planning environment, and we're happy to see the progress that's been made so far. The mid-rise manual was written by LGA and SVN planners and architects, commissioned by Bob Eisenberg and Environmental Defense, who are also submitting something to you today. So thank you for the work that staff and council have done to move mid-rise forward so far. The mid-rise implementation report that's on the agenda today details many of the issues that the mid-rise manual has asked to be addressed. I'm here in support of that direction. The city's already taken some really important steps by expanding the avenues framework, removing the avenues segment study requirement, and updating mid-rise design guidelines, and moving towards as-of-right permissions on major streets and major corridors and avenues. These are really important changes, and staff and council deserve credit for that. The items on the implementation report today speak to changes to amenity space requirements and bike parking specifically, and we support both of those proposed changes. The amenity space requirements are for 4 stories and 60 units or less. The builders and architects that we're working with are noting that wherever they have permission to build a 6-story building, that's what they would prefer to do, because the economics of building small buildings are really tight. And so I just question why the cutoff at 4. We would recommend that be permitted for a 6-story building as well. I have lived in a bunch of different mid-rise buildings myself that had no amenity space, had no bike parking, had no car parking. These kinds of buildings are actually really popular in the City of Toronto, and what it just means that the residents of the building, they would be more likely to explore their neighborhood gym or club or something like that rather than use an indoor gym. And the staff have looked into this, reporting on how amenity spaces are used. It doesn't look like this is going to massively affect people's quality of life. And I would argue that it might just contribute to some more local retail support, which is needed, right? It can also translate into $20,000 savings for just 1,000 square foot unit. And this is significant when we're trying to be really sensitive to price and cost sensitivities right now. I think this is an important change. The bike parking change proposed makes sense. It's the kind of flexibility that allows builders to choose what is going to work best for their product. I mean, if you go around, you see there's still lots of mid-rise buildings that have units for sale or for rent. They're still expensive, so we do need to be able to chip away at some of the rules and regulations that are making it prohibitively expensive if the city wants to realize the EHON vision with a lot more mid-rise. So to do that, I think the city's going to need to work on expanding the zoning for avenues and major streets, and I hope that the pause in the rollout of ward-by-ward zoning is used to clarify the hierarchy of different community plans so that the next rollout can be quicker. The city needs to make the approval system genuinely easier for projects that comply. So there's still more the city and utilities can do, in particular, to reduce delay, simplify submission requirements, and create a clearer path for compliant projects. These are ways that we bring down the costs of building. And I just want to point out in the staff report, you're showing this development cliff. The city has objectives for how much housing they want to build over time. If no one is building in 2028 and 2029, we need to keep working on making the conditions right for building. And I think that the public appetite and acceptance of mid-rise is relatively good compared to other housing forms in the city. And I just encourage us to keep an eye on that. Finally, this is really just about feasibility and not just permissions. So a project that's still too costly to build is not really unlocked. And so the loading, the garbage, the technical standards, these are all still important things to work on.
Claire, I'm going to have to stop you there. You're
Okay.
past time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Claire? No? Thank you so much for your deputation.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I have Jeff Cattell. Morning, Jeff.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee, and my local MP, my local councillor. Well, thank you, Rachel. The Federation of North Toronto Resident Associations, which I'm co-pres, wishes to express our concerns regarding the directions outlined in the proposal report. We obviously support the goal of increasing housing supply in Toronto. However, this particular report, we're deeply concerned by an apparent fundamental shift in the city's land use planning methodology from sound design-led principles of the 2024 mid-rise guidelines to a framework dictated primarily by short-term economics and private sector profitability. The Parcel Economics report explicitly states that its goal is to, quote, inform how mid-rise projects could be better positioned to achieve financial feasibility. The report acknowledges that even the most aggressive combination of levers, including total removal of amenity spaces and loading requirements, only reduces the target sales price by an average of $60 per square foot compared to a market rule of thumb pricing of about $1,000 per square foot. This would result in projected savings of 6% to prospective buyers, perhaps incentivizing some uplift in total sales. Whether these marginal cost efficiency estimates will be passed on to the home buyer or the tenant depends entirely on the appetite of developers, rather than being a structural requirement of the policy. This approach treats essential residential infrastructure, such as indoor amenity space, contiguous outdoor space, and secure bicycle park storage as mere levers for profitability, and shifts responsibility to address the housing issue onto the taxpayer. There's a number of elements to this. Economics-led planning. The city has pivoted from land use planning to land use economics, using pro forma profit metrics rather than design excellence as the primary driver for zoning changes. Private sector gain and public cost. The initiative focuses on marginal improvements to developer profit margins that may not change the trajectory of housing starts, yet will have a profound impact on community livability for the next 25 years. The threat to the public realm. Proposals to remove Type G loading and waste collection requirements to increase a building's sellable floor area that transfers private operational costs onto the public. The omission of architectural expertise. The financial feasibility analysis by Parcel Economics was conducted without involvement from architecture, resulting in test fits that lack qualitative rigor regarding livability and the physical reality of construction. Stakeholder engagement. Imbalance. There is a disparity between the intensive technical engagement with the development industry through this project and the sparse survey-based engagement with the public. Procedural concerns. The interim report represents substantive policy directions without disclosing the full research findings or providing the public with technical briefings required to evaluate complex economic claims. The report makes the tacit assumption that mid-rise development is inherently private market-driven, whereas in fact there's a significant sector comprising public housing, Create TO and so on, and not-for-profit organizations like co-ops and Life Lease. These alternative tenure models tend to focus on meeting the needs of the occupants to live there, not just profit and the dictates of the pro forma. Were these organizations, these tenure types, were they consulted? We don't know.
So fundamentally, the approach neglects what economists call externalities. These reforms, quote unquote, aim to curb internal costs to sellers and buyers. But that internal saving is at an external expense. It costs neighbors and the physical environment and the whole city in material and immaterial ways like aesthetics, reputation, tourist draw, civic and social life. Unfortunately, it's very hard to cost out the impacts, the negative impacts of that. We all share the goal of building a livable, vibrant city for all residents. We recognize the urgency of the current housing crisis. However, the solution should not be the systematic dismantling of the very standards that were built up over the last 40 years that ensure Toronto remains a world-class city to live in.
Can you please wrap it up?
Yeah, we recommend that Planning and Housing Committee defer approval of this report and the tacit endorsement of the 15 items. It's not free, actually. It's 15.
Thank you.
Recommended for action until full findings and data sets used by parcel economics are disclosed.
Thank you. We do have a question for you. Councillor Matlow, question.
Hey, Jeff. I'm over here. I'm just confused by something that you requested, and perhaps there's just a misunderstanding. I've been rereading the recommendations to the committee over and over again, and I hear that you don't want the committee to approve the report today. Unless I'm reading this wrong, the only thing that I'm seeing here is an approval to undertake consultation. And then that would give us an opportunity to have that exactly what you're requesting, which is that the consultation with our communities and FONTRA, and then arrive at a place that we're satisfied with.
Well, we're saying we have there's sort of been a shift here from land use planning, where you're concerned about architecture, design, impacts, and so on, in a comprehensive manner, to one that only looks at it from a pro forma perspective. How can I shave off savings by making design changes that will have longer term impacts, but the details there through parcel economics are not provided. Exactly, what the consultations that we do in the city on with a public meeting, 4 across the city, that's not going to really elucidate the kind of detail that is not revealed in this report.
So that's important. So the consultation needs to be genuine. It needs to be earnest. It needs to be provide details. It needs to be iterative. Are there specific things that you would want to see as part of this consultation process that would be meaningful to you?
Well, I think there's a need for more analysis of what the heck's going on here. But we have a fundamental concern with the stance taken by this report. Okay. Why isn't it a balanced report? It's a off-balance report. Right?
So as part of the process, you're saying you would want other details or perspectives to be shared as part of the consultation? Am I hearing you correctly?
I mean, it's making the assumption that you can reduce the use of type G, and we heard, so the garbage ends up on the sidewalk, and the residents have to deal with it.
Okay, and by the way,
of issues from these proposals.
So if there was an amendment that I understand is coming to clearly address that specific concern, would that be helpful to you about not having the garbage ending up on the sidewalk?
No, I think it's the issue is bigger. The stance of this report is getting away. We built these requirements up over a number of years for climate reasons, for environmental reasons, from resident impact issues, and all of a sudden now it's time to do away with them. Right? Let's cut them back. That's unfortunate.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Jeff? No, seeing none. Jeff, as always, thank you. That takes us to our next deputant, John Caliendo. Is John online? No? Okay. Ian Carmichael? Not? Okay. So I believe that completes the deputants on this item. Oh, there's a new one. Brian Chung. How are you, Brian?
Very well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors. My name is Brian Chung. I'm a board member of More Neighbours Toronto, which is a pro-housing advocacy organization. We basically want to take this time to very much thank staff, city staff, for continuing to work towards this very important aspect of, in some ways, reforming what we need for more housing, cheaper housing, more diverse housing throughout the city of Toronto. Also very much looking forward to the mid-rise performance guidelines report, which I believe would be coming up in the next meeting in June, which perhaps may also provide more details, specifically technical details, on some of these suggestions being made about reducing requirements for amenities as well as shared usage. I am going to also repeat from a previous speaker, Claire Malcolmson, where she said that it would be very important to expand permissions for these from 4 floors to 6 floors. We have given the permissions in the zoning to go up to this level of density and this level of height. If we are focused on actually building the things that we say that the city wants to build, I think it's important to make these consistent, important to make these easy to understand, important to basically have a common grounding and discussion base on this. I don't think that this is going to be any surprise to anybody, but as More Neighbours Toronto, we think that it is important to have the conversation about economics and whether it is possible to build the things that we are permitting to build, right? So the city is going forward and saying that we want to have these formats, these typologies, and we have given permission to do so. But if we don't also match that with the fiscal and financial ability to do so, I think we're basically giving a false promise there. Yes, there are definitely externalities that are going to happen with some of these suggestions that we have had with reduction of shared amenities in these mid-rise buildings. But I would also point out that there are some very clear and existing externalities that have happened with single-family housing that we've done over decades and decades and decades. And those externalities have been baked in to a certain extent and have affected the terrain of what kind of housing, as well as transportation costs, environmental costs, loneliness, access to amenities in terms of city and shared amenities. With the additional density behind this mid-rise housing, I think that also adds additional arguments for creating of community level amenities, things like libraries, things like community centers, shared neighborhood retail. I think all of these things are what we consider very important to our quality of life here in Toronto, and having higher density in neighborhoods in a more compact space adds to that argument, as well as adding to the tax base and the revenues which provide us for being able to do that. So just to close out, very important work. Glad to see that it is continuing to happen. It wraps up a lot of the things that the city has been doing in the past few years, and look forward to seeing what comes of it and the consultations that hopefully will progress after this is approved at City Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for Brian? No, seeing none. Brian, thank you. Okay, we'll bring it in. Are there any questions of staff? No? Does anyone want to speak? Councillor Chernos-Lynn.
I don't have to go first, just because I don't know if that's your.
So you're the
here?
only member of council
Okay.
who's here who's not a member of the committee, so you go first.
All right. I guess we don't get that many guests at environment and infrastructure, so I'd invite my colleagues to come to that. Sometimes I don't even know the protocol, but I have been here the last 2 meetings, so I must like this committee. Anyways, I just wanted to let you know I have submitted a letter to the committee, and I am very much in support of the letter from Diane Sachs, Councillor Sachs. And my concern, I just want to put out there, I am in support of having different types of housing, mid-rise housing, I think is, as someone who has many 50, 60-story towers going up, I yearn for more mid-rise. But I am concerned about some of the impacts of that and want to make sure that we address those in the most not just practical, but creative and desirable ways. And in particular, I am concerned about the way this report leans towards getting rid of full G-type loading space. And I want to make sure that we're supportive of exploring options that are both innovative and that are alternatives to waste collection that ends up along the right of way. I have a number of mid-rise buildings and certainly many more coming. And I'm concerned about the idea of having dozens and dozens of waste bins all over the sidewalk. And I'm concerned for a variety of reasons. I look in my ward, I have Hull and Bloor View, I have the CNIB, and I have a lot of accessibility challenges. And then you add to that snow, and I am worried that our residents are going to have trouble navigating the sidewalks, particularly in some of the smaller, narrower lots where we are starting to see some of that mid-rise development. So I am concerned about the idea to raise the number of units to get rid of type G loading, and I really would urge a reframing of that question as the as you go out to consult with the city, because I think that's one of the ways that would make mid-rise buildings and that gentle density that's coming more appealing to people. And I want to make sure that we're doing it in the most productive way and pragmatic way forward. And when I think of things like Towards a Beautiful City, a more beautiful city that Councillor Matlow brought forward that our council has endorsed, I think these are things that we really need to think deeply about as we're going out to consult. So I would urge the committee to adopt that recommendation that Councillor Sachs brought forward and look forward to the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matlow.
So I want to thank Councillor Shoneslin for very thoughtful comments because I couldn't agree more that, you know, what we need to achieve, what I believe we all want to achieve, are, you know, more housing opportunities, and recognizing that when we create policy and we reform zoning and we recognize that we want to address the housing crisis and we want those who grow up in our neighborhoods to be able to continue to afford to live in the very neighborhoods that they grew up in, that we can't just say, hey, that's our new policy, without recognizing that if the pro forma for the builder is unrealistic, that we can say we're blue in the face that we want housing in our city. If they can't build it, it won't happen. So that has to jibe. That being said, though, these decisions are often kind of characterized as sort of binary choices between, do you want to build housing and do you want great neighborhoods that have school capacity and social services and infrastructure and parks, and yes, sidewalks that aren't cluttered with bins everywhere. Our success is striving to get that all together. That's, in my opinion, what is called good planning. I would add that I've had a lot of conversations about this with both residents groups and builders, that the word character is often used as a euphemism for no change.
Yeah.
That being said, yes, you've heard that too. But I think there actually is an earnest, like a very genuine argument for character when it comes to beauty. I know that's subjective, but design, materiality. And often, you know, if you can get over the fight over exactly how many people live in any one building, but everyone can agree on maybe it being having a gable and bricks or something that kind of feels like the neighborhood that they love, people can shake hands and go, okay, I'm good with that. In other words, we don't always have to debate how many people live in a building. It can be just, we like the building, and those people who live there will be great contributors to the community. That's how we kind of get to resolution. And so I really like the idea of having a consultation about how to, I mean, mid-rise, by the way, is the future of the market. And there will most likely be fewer in the coming years very massively tall buildings and more mid-rise. That's certainly where I think many are predicting the market's going. And type G loading, if it's just sort of universally like you always have to do it, well, there are contexts where it'll actually be a lot easier for the builder to move forward without having to do that. But yes, there has to be a solution to figuring out how to make sure that the sidewalk isn't just cluttered. So the motion that Councillor Sachs, and I believe, are you moving? Oh, Jamal is moving. Councillor Myers is moving. I think is a thoughtful contribution to this discussion that we're going to have with the communities, because we can figure out how to make mid-rise work without being obtuse to negative consequences of doing the right thing. You know, I just want to give some comfort to Jeff and others who might be worried about where the report's going, that I would see this consultation as something that is a real consultation. And there has to be different perspectives heard, and there needs to be some debate and an iterative discussion. But ultimately, we can't not have a conversation about how to ensure that mid-rise can work in the city, because again, we've been talking about mid-rise for years. You know, those of us who have had concerns about, you know, towers everywhere have often said we want to build Paris and Toronto. Well, we can't do that without mid-rise. So I look forward to that conversation. And then hopefully, I mean, if this works, we'll have a report back after a good consultation process that will address the pro forma challenges of builders, that we can have a very vibrant and renewed industry that is not struggling the way they are today, where there's economic development, there's more housing opportunities, there's more affordability. But at the same time, we build a beautiful city with beautifully designed buildings and sidewalks that are navigable, safe, and that we're really happy to see. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to pause on this item for 1 second. I've just received a request from the mayor to add a new item to the agenda. So this would be item 13, I suppose. It's entitled Zoning Regulations for Places of Worship in Residential and Mixed-Use Communities. I'm going to move that we add it to the agenda. All those in favor of adding it to the agenda? All those opposed? So we will add that to the agenda and it will go to the end. I wanted to do it now so that members had plenty of time to read it before we consider it. Okay. Next I had Councillor Myers, I believe.
Thank you, and thank you to our colleague, Councillor Turner-Flynn, for coming, and thank you for our other colleague, Councillor Sachs, for putting forward her very thoughtful motion. I've worked with staff to get some language to address some of the concerns raised by Councillor Turner-Flynn and Councillor Matlow on just moving
something.
Yes.
Okay.
On moving an amendment. I'm setting it up. It's that the Planning and Housing Committee requests the Chief Planner and ED City Planning to prioritize public and stakeholder consultations on options for managing and collecting waste, recyclable materials, and organics that do not require curbside staging. And I think this addresses some of the concerns you had, Chair Perks. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I'm going to ask you a question just so that it's clear to everybody. This is slightly different than the letter we received. But I think it's different because it doesn't override the previous council decision and it doesn't decide what the consultation will result in, but rather encourages staff to put forward, to prioritize certain ideas.
Correct. And the previous motion, the way it was worded, would have required the item to go to council for decision, whereas here it stays within the committee, and that it's just giving further direction to the consultations that will be underway.
Okay. Any other questions of the mover? Nope. Does anyone else want to speak? Okay, I'm just going to speak very quickly. First of all, thanks to Councillor Myers for working with the clerk and I to make sure we weren't contradicting council's previous direction, but nevertheless, we're giving some advice to staff about how to conduct the consultation. So that's a good outcome. How did my time get there? Okay. I want to, though, step back a little bit. I think Jeff raised a really important question, which is, what's the cart and what's the horse? Are we designing our planning policies for the convenience of landowners and their, financial interests, or are we doing it in the public interest? And I think that's a very important question. I've supported reviewing the way we do mid-rise, not because I think it's really important that we make it cheaper to build, but rather because I think it's really important for us as a quasi-regulatory body to, from time to time, review the rules we have in place to make sure that we're not putting regulatory burden on for no purpose. If there's a way of meeting people's housing requirements that doesn't create undue burden on the surrounding community or externalize some of the impacts of that new housing into the neighborhood, we should, from time to time, go out and ask members of the community, professionals, builders, look at other jurisdictions to make sure that, yeah, we're not creating pointless regulatory burden. And that's what this is for. If I could have a little quiet, guys? Yeah? But on the other side of the debate, we get folks saying, oh no, regulation just always increases the cost of housing and you should have as few as possible because, we want to create market conditions so we build more housing faster. And I equally reject that point of view. First of all, anyone making the claim that local planning rules are somehow the most significant barrier to new housing getting built hasn't actually been following how the housing market works. If you have heard of the term real estate bubble anywhere in your life, you know that just the market does not produce logical outcomes in the housing space. It just doesn't. Historically, it is very, 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 very clear that ownership and control of land and the speculative, almost casino-style investment system in land has always produced discontinuities and breaks and market failures and so on that overwhelm anything a local municipality does. So I reject outright the idea that the purpose of doing this is to make some marginal change in land economics that's going to result in housing. That's just not going to happen. What is happening, and I think is very exciting and where we should turn even more of our attention, is the report we dealt with earlier, item 3, where for the first time in almost 40 years, the City of Toronto has dragged other governments to the table to say the only places in the world where you have a healthy and balanced housing market are places where the state actively participates in supporting co-ops, not-for-profits, and directly building public housing. Areas in the world that rely completely on the private market to house people always have market failure, always create conditions where a significant portion of the population either is homeless or has to leave. So this is not, to me, an exercise in us trying to, play around with the land use economics and getting different outcomes. Rather, it's us recognizing that mid-rise is a good form, in many ways a preferred form, that building a wider variety of housing types means that a wider variety of people have access to housing at different phases in their life, and that it's incumbent on any government to review its regulations from time to time to make sure there's no unnecessary burden. And based on that, I really look forward to folks in Toronto having this conversation. There you go. Okay, does anyone else want to speak? Nope, seeing none. We have the one motion and the items, so I'm going to suggest we take them as a package. All those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. All righty. Where are we now? Item
12 is the new item.
Okay, so the next one is the new business item that the mayor put on the agenda, or that we voted to put on the agenda. This is the one about making it easier to build multiplexes. We circulated that first thing this morning. Do any members have questions of staff on this? Nope. Does anyone want to speak on this? Nope. So I'll just move it. All those in favor, opposed if any, that carries. Thank you, Mr. Connect. We're really glad you came down for that. And I guess that just leaves the other new business item, which I don't have in front of me. It's item 13. Yeah. This is zoning regulations for places of worship in residential and mixed-use communities. It's a request to the chief planner to report back next year with updated zoning regulations for places of worship to consider how they can best fit within Toronto's residential and mixed-use communities. Are there any questions of staff? Councillor Myers.
Thank you. So just having seen this, what's the purpose of this? More specifically?
Mr. Chair, we have been made aware of some instances where places of worship that exist are seeking to expand and are running into some challenges with local zoning rules. And so this motion requests us to look at the zoning rules that are in place and consider whether any need to be updated. Most of the rules that apply to places of worship are somewhat dated. They date from prior to amalgamation. I'll note that when City Council adopted the harmonized citywide zoning bylaw in 2013, the regulations that apply to places of worship were appealed, and they remain under appeal. And so we would use this opportunity to understand the issues that the appellants have brought forward on those appeals, and whether there's any need to update the existing zoning regulations previously adopted by council to reflect current realities. I'm going to note the motion very specifically looks at mixed-use areas and residential areas. There have been sort of historical issues around potential conflicts between places of worship and employment uses. And so the focus of this is not to look at permissions for places of worship in the city's employment lands.
Okay. And then for the mixed use areas, those could also include former employment lands though, correct?
If those employment lands have been redesignated and are now designated mixed use in the official plan, then that would be covered in this motion.
So is this motion also looking at the issue of, we're sick of tired and talking about it, but this is a real issue, parking, in that what I get a lot of complaints about is that a lot of businesses can't operate on certain days when worship service is in place because the parking is full. And none of the customers are able to actually visit the businesses.
Yeah, I think this motion doesn't specify which standard should be looked at or whether, I think the first step would be to identify issues. I'm aware that parking is an issue. Sometimes it creates conflict. Sometimes it also limits the ability of places of worship to grow or expand or to locate themselves. Obviously, the right balance needs to be struck there to make these function successfully.
Yes, and then I guess the other issue that I get a lot of complaints about is parking on residential streets when, again, big ceremonies or days of worship, and that residents can't actually get out of their driveways. So is that going to be looked at as well?
I would put that in the bucket of issues related to parking. I think the reality is places of worship function in some ways like places of assembly. You know, they're places that attract large attendees, large numbers of attendees, not constantly and consistently every day of the week, but at times. And when that happens, it creates impacts for community members that sometimes create conflicts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff? No? Does anyone want to speak? No? Okay, so I'll move the recommendations in the mayor's letter. All those in favor, opposed, carried. We have completed our agenda. In the morning, well done all. Well,